We, Yevhen Plinsky and I, Marichka Padalko, continue the national telethon on the 1+1 channel. And next we have an international topic.
Stanislav Zhelikhovsky, an international affairs expert, joins us via video link to discuss main international events around the world. Welcome, Stanislav.
Good morning.
Good afternoon. Hello.
Let's start with the event taking place today, the informal meeting of EU leaders in Copenhagen. There are two main issues on the agenda for this event: strengthening Europe's joint defense and supporting Ukraine. In Copenhagen, they will also discuss future security guarantees for Ukraine, the use of frozen assets, and further pressure on Russia. That's the official release. So what should we expect, and how much of a breakthrough could this event be, considering that in recent weeks Europe has been attacked by so-called unknown, in quotes, yes, though everyone knows they're Russian, drones, or, well, has Europe finally woken up? What should we expect from this meeting?
First of all, I want to congratulate you and all Ukrainians on the feast of the intercession of the Holy Mother of God, on the Day of Defenders of Ukraine, and on Ukrainian Cossacks Day. I wish all of us resilience, strength, and of course victory. And indeed, these days, Copenhagen has become the center of a major political event. Today, an informal European Union summit is taking place there, and the very next day, the European Political Community Summit will be held. And these events are happening against the backdrop of hybrid attacks and growing security challenges. As is known, a number of incidents involving unidentified drones have recently been recorded over Denmark and other countries in the region, including, in fact, flights over airports and military facilities. Well, indeed, we understand that all of this is provocation by the Russian Federation, and it wants to test the strength of the Western world. So this actively encourages our valued partners, so to speak, to diligently look for effective ways to counter these significant challenges and potential threats that may arise. Well, if we're talking specifically about the agenda, the main of the summit, the informal EU summit, then the main focus is the security and defense capability of the European continent. And the leaders of the countries are talking about a plan, will be discussing a plan to strengthen defense by 2030. And in particular, they will focus on the rapid deployment of joint defense projects to support the eastern flank, coordination of actions, and political oversight. And it's important to understand that this can actually be seen as the implementation of those intentions that were, so to speak, outlined back in the spring of this year, when the European Commission presented the European Defense White Paper, the Readiness 2030 plan, which specifically provides for strengthening the defense capability and security of the European Union. And of course, Ukraine will be a separate topic. It is reported that European aid has already exceeded 173.5 billion euros, and now new mechanisms for military, economic, and political support are being sought. At the same time, an important part of the discussions is dedicated to Ukraine's European integration, reforms, and further steps on the path to joining the European Union. And here it is worth noting that Ukraine's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Andriy Sybiha, just recently said that Ukraine expects further progress from the informal meeting of EU leaders in Copenhagen, in the context of negotiations on opening those clusters which, let's say, would otherwise prevent us from moving forward towards membership in the European Union. We know that Hungary is creating obstacles for us there, but we'll see. Perhaps there will still be some clarity on this issue at the informal summit in Copenhagen, so we are also expecting news in this context. And in general, I'd like to add that all the decisions that may be made will form the basis of the roadmap which they promised to present in October at the European Council meeting. I genuinely believe that not all potential issues will inherently have readily available options discovered for how to effectively implement them optimally. And again, the issue of frozen Russian assets is, so to speak, an ongoing topic ever since the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by the Russian Federation. It's a constant topic for discussion, and there are different views on this matter. But we'll see what actually will be said. Still, I would like to see progress in this direction, because here we need to both support Ukraine and punish the Russian Federation at the same time.
Mr. Stanislav, we are currently discussing the meeting of European leaders, talking about the American leader and how his rhetoric has noticeably changed towards both Ukraine and Russia. At the same time, he is again talking about what should happen, a meeting between Putin and Zelensky. Tell me, please, is it because he doesn't want to deviate from his strategy? Or is this just another excuse, a meeting that Putin will refuse in order to keep putting pressure on Russia in a new way?
Well, yes, indeed. We see that US President Donald Trump continues to talk about this. In other words, he believes that such a meeting should take place. Again, I want to emphasize that Ukraine is open to negotiations, and President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky has repeatedly stated this. And in general, the Ukrainian leadership also says that we are ready for a meeting at the highest level. And this could take place almost anywhere, well, except of course Moscow. That's it. And here it's worth emphasizing that besides Kyiv, Ukraine as a whole is also excluded because we don't want to host representatives of the aggressor country on our own soil. But in other countries where this is possible, I think such a meeting could take place, of course, for the sake of stopping the active hostilities in Ukraine, so that Ukrainian citizens stop dying, so that infrastructure is not destroyed, cities are not wiped out, and ultimately so that a state of peace without war finally prevails in Ukraine. That's it. But so far, there has been no progress on this, and Moscow is already demonstrating in every possible way that it does not want to negotiate. And just now I was talking about those attacks that are being carried out by Russia, including against NATO member countries and European Union member states. This is a demonstration that Putin is ready to keep fighting and expand his aggression. If we carefully consider the current position of the American president, I truly think he still leaves a significant window of opportunity open for discussion and resolution. However, we clearly observed that quite apart from various diplomatic options and strategic approaches for effectively resolving the ongoing Russian-Ukrainian war and ultimately achieving a much-needed ceasefire, he is also consistently making public statements that are indeed far more adequate and thoughtfully considered than those he made previously. In other words, we see that he understands Ukraine, and likewise he is criticizing the Russian Federation more and more. And similarly, we see that both he and his circle are already making statements about strengthening Ukraine and even mentioning things that could truly change the course of the war. For example, transferring Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine and granting permission for Ukraine to carry out long-range strikes deep into the Russian Federation. So yes, we understand that for now these may still just be statements and signals to Moscow, but nevertheless this is an important shift in rhetoric and possibly a change in the position of the American leader and in general the United States of America given the current political realities.
Overnight, the U.S. Congress missed the funding deadline, which led to the first government shutdown in the United States in the past 7 years, the so-called shutdown. And this is happening again during Trump's administration. The last time there were threats of this shutdown, we talked a lot about the risks it posed to continued U.S. support for Ukraine, those aid packages that were allocated for us. This time, is there any direct threat to us? And what does this shutdown mean overall? Why did it arise, and who stands to gain or lose the most from it?
Well, once again, we need to understand that the reason is the disagreements between the Republican and Democratic parties. And specifically in the context of, for example, the budget initiatives that are taking place, as well as some other aspects. And this is understandable because in a year, the United States will hold midterm elections for the US Congress, and the political struggle is only intensifying. So the shutdown could be a direct consequence of this political struggle, as has happened before. In fact, and now, obviously, the current situation is certainly no exception to this rule, and it could once again potentially result in the widespread paralysis of many essential government agencies. And this significant development could very negatively affect numerous critical aspects of both America's domestic and its foreign affairs and international relations. As for Ukraine, I don't think this can have any impact right now, considering that we have already switched to a commercial basis for obtaining American types of weapons. But if Congress continues to be locked in such a struggle, bipartisan struggle, and if, let's say, even on important issues, some politicians or even entire parties refuse to compromise, then obviously this could have an overall impact and some repercussions could affect Ukraine as well. But again, it all depends on how long the shutdown will last, whether a way out will be found now or whether there will be some concessions from either the Democratic or Republican Party. We understand that the stakes are extremely high right now. No one wants to show, let's say, any political weakness because, once again, there's a struggle for electoral resources. And so, let's put it this way. It's hard to predict right now, but in the near future, I don't foresee that Ukraine will be affected in any significant way. But again, we will continue to diligently monitor the evolving situation in the United States, and sincerely hope that American politicians, with their collective wisdom and foresight, will indeed possess enough sagacity and political acumen to successfully overcome this profoundly difficult and challenging period. This is crucial because external adversaries, especially formidable ones like the Russian Federation, are meticulously and closely watching these unfolding events, patiently waiting for an opportune moment and a strategic opportunity to strike back, to deliver a truly painful and devastating blow to the United States and, by extension, to the various countries of the free and democratic world. They aim to achieve this precisely by exploiting such inherent internal political contradictions and deep divisions, which, well, are almost always intrinsically and inevitably inherent to all democratic countries and their complex political systems.
Mr. Stanislav, thank you very much. Stanislav Zhelikhovsky, international affairs expert. He was with us live. We discussed, among other things, the fact that a shutdown occurred in the United States. That's when government institutions temporarily stop working. Let's hope this won't negatively affect Ukraine.
Thank you, Mr. Stanislav. And today is the Day of Defenders of Ukraine, because in fact, most of our broadcast is dedicated to this holiday. There are already a lot of official announcements and greetings you can read, as well as personal ones.
Today, we also remember that the moment of silence at 9 o'clock holds special significance. Don't forget to congratulate all your defenders of Ukraine today.